Hi, and welcome to this new episode of In Search for Meaning and Courage. I'm Abby of Abi Keene Healing. I'm a healer body worker. And as you heard me say before, I'm mainly a human being searching for courage and meaning in this crazy, wacky world of ours. And so I'm enjoying talking to my other fellow beings and hearing from them what courage and meaning feels to them in their own life so that we can inspire open hearted conversations. And so today I have Jaclyn with me. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, I love that intro. I just love the part of like, yeah, and that's right. We're just humans doing the best we can.
Yes, we are. And I think in this world where we have so many expectations of ourselves and we're supposed to be perfect and look a certain way and be a certain way, there's so much pressure and stress about it that if we can open up a more sincere conversation about what we're really feeling.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you for being my victim today.
Thank you for asking me. I feel very honored to be here with you. So thank you.
So what would you like us to know about you?
I am, let's see, what am I? I like to call myself a holistic life coach. After working for 15 years in plus size fashion and holding space and fitting rooms and all kinds of different areas in that, I realized that I kept seeing this pattern and this core thing that was coming through all of my customers, and it was this worthiness piece around their bodies. And so I decided to go back to coaching school to try to help hold space for that and so they can heal that. And so I help plus size women learn to find their worth so that they can start taking care of their bodies because they love it and not punishing it because they hate it.
What an amazing shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
From that it's not necessary, like it's from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Yeah, because everything, consumer culture, everything tells us, right, that like it's about the outside. We have to change our bodies, you have to change your hair color, you have to have the right lipstick or the right dress or the right whatever, right? And I believed that for a long time. It was the whole reason I got into fashion to begin with. Like I believed that like you could make yourself feel better by, a great dress or something, which I still believe is true. And also it's not a lasting effect, right? Like the real work that I've realized through my own process, right, is that it's an inside out job.
Yeah. So actually, let's, if you don't mind, jump into that, because what led you to make this shift and this switch, and how did you get there?
Oh goodness. I feel like there's so many markers on that journey, right? And I feel like I never quite know where to start when someone asks me this question, because without all of those little paths, right? Like I wouldn't end up being who I am today. And a lot of them are like the not so pretty parts that I don't want to tell you and I don't want to show about you. And so I guess the shorter, if I could kind of jam a few years in together, was that like I did all of the things, right? Like I did all the things to try to make the outside look different. I used to my first store that I had, and I live in New Orleans. I don't think I said that. And so I had a store in the French Quarter for a long time, and I was really putting on this facade of like, if I can just pretend everything's okay on the outside, everything, like I'll be fooling everyone. And I would walk around in the middle of the swampy summers that we have here, just like wearing 2 pairs of Spanx under all of my clothes, and somehow, working in a retail environment covered with mirrors and somehow dodging all the mirrors, and just like not looking. And I did the diets. I did the not diets. I went to therapy. I had weight loss surgery. Like I did all of the things, right? And I still ended up in the same place of just hating myself.
Yeah.
Really hating myself, right? Just not, like just on this pattern with like bad choices around men, thinking that that was going to fix me, complete me, as Jerry Maguire would say. Like it didn't. It just kept dating different asshole men, and and just all this outside stuff, right? Like what else can I change? What else can I change? What else can I change? And at some point, I just hit a wall, right? Like I hit a
Mm.
wall, and there were moments, right? There were moments where things got better, right? And then it was like, oh, here I am again, here I am
Yeah.
again, here I am again. And so at some point in that journey, I ended up closing my first store in New Orleans and moving out to Los Angeles to pursue a partnership with a designer out there. And we were going to open our own store in Beverly Hills. And I had all these reasons that I was moving out there, and they were mostly financial based, right? And the short version of that, as I always say, I had one of those very stereotypical West Coast experiences where I didn't get anything that I went out there for and got everything that I needed. And I just love that. I love how God can work in our lives, right? Like, it's just like, yeah, I moved for all the wrong reasons and also got everything that I needed. That business partnership did not work. But what it did was it gave me this really beautiful space to work on this hook I have about emotionally abusive men, right? So I got to do
Mm.
that work with a woman in business, right? But it gave me
Mm.
that space to clear out those wounds and show up differently for myself and learn my worth. I also got out there and I didn't have any titles to hang on to. I didn't have like shop owner, homeowner, whatever, right? Friend. Like I had no titles to hang on to. And so I really that stripped of that nothingness of those outside hooks that we hang our worth on, I had to really figure out who I was.
So hold
And
it
what a
before you
beautiful
continue.
gift.
What so how did it feel to you? Because it just feels super significant to find yourself like without your different armors and your different like hooks to hold on to, to keep you afloat. Like, is that scary? Is that like depressing? Is that uplifting? Is that inspiring? Like, where were you with all that?
Terrified is the answer to that. I was terrified, and for the first time since early childhood, I had social anxiety. Like I was always a person that could hold space and make anyone in the world feel like they were my best friend and that I was having the time of my life and I could act confident my whole life. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden I didn't have that anymore. And I was terrified. I had so much anxiety. I I don't know how to put anxiety into words, right? So I always think about this as an example of when I'm trying to explain this to how deep my anxiety was. I lived about 15, 20 minutes from work, and I took the same path every day and also didn't have enough confidence in myself to be able to get there without my GPS. Like that was the level of anxiety that I had. I would do the same path from West Hollywood to downtown LA every day to go to the factories and learn, when I was doing production out there. And, there's like 3 roads that go to downtown LA, like all roads head to downtown LA. And I would use my GPS every day to get to the same places every day. I was terrified. And I couldn't do anything. And and my only I started using this coping mechanism with shopping. And
Mm.
so I lived blocks from Rodeo Drive, and I would constantly go in the stores and buy shoes and handbags and accessories, right? Because I was a person in a larger body. I didn't fit in the clothes. I felt like shit about that. I was in a partnership with someone telling me that I could never like being like, you cannot work in fashion. You're not fashionable. And I'm going, wait, I just spent how many years in fashion? How am I not fashionable? And so I was like buying designer shoes and designer handbags and all of this stuff, trying to like fill that up, trying to, fill that and that tool that I used to use of like making the outside look right? Put myself in whatever box I need to be in to swim in this 90210 world that I'm steadily finding myself in. It wasn't
So,
working.
and yeah, so tell me about. So you do that, like, in a way, you're eating junk food that is
Yeah,
not
yeah,
agreeing
yeah,
with
yeah.
your body. Was it clear to you throughout that this is not the right path? Was there how did it work for you? Or were you in denial? Or was there a little voice somewhere in the very depth of you that was saying, not this?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I think there's layers to that. I definitely I knew that the social anxiety was not okay, and I knew that that was not normal, and I had done enough work on myself through therapy, through traditional routes of therapy, like from so like I had that like moment after my weight loss surgery that I was like, oh, I've lost all this weight and I'm still not happy and I'm still miserable and I'm still dating the same asshole men. And so that was like 2011, and so I started getting real help around that time. And so this was like 4 years later, 3 to 4 years later. And so I'd had that little base, right? Like I had some knowledge that like this isn't right,
Yeah.
and I know how to walk into a room and talk to people. Why can't I do that? Right. You know what I mean? Like what I can
Yeah.
always do is cry in my car. Like, so I knew that part wasn't right. And so I did reach out. I went to a traditional therapist, and I went to a psychiatrist. And then I also had like a coach person. And I remember talking to the coach over and over again. And she just kept saying, um, is this behavior hurting you financially? And I was like, no, it's not. Like, I don't know what's happening, but I have plenty of money to pay for this stuff. And she just kept saying, okay, well, then you'll do it till you stop. Like, like it's kind of keeping you alive right now. And she was exactly right. Right. And so as I kept doing that, I kept talking to her. We would go really long hikes together, and I would say all this stuff. And then she would give me a reflection back. That's how we worked together. And I would go to the psychiatrist, and she would tweak my meds a little bit, and I would go to the therapist and just spill all of my guts to the therapist, right? And it was the combination of that that really and I started meeting really lovely women that were also on a healing path. So I started slowly getting this like women centric support group around me that God just kind of felt like he put in my lap. Like a woman that I had met years ago through a mutual friend that lived in South Carolina. We moved out to LA at the exact same time, right? And we became friends, and we were both on this like path of like trying to figure out what we're doing out here on the West Coast. And so I ended up getting like support in these really interesting ways.
So it sounds to me, if you don't mind, like you actually asked for help, as
I
opposed to
did.
I can do it all myself, or I'm just going to
No.
stay in denial. It sounds like a kind of stepping up, like I can take responsibility and ask for help and change the way things are. I don't have to stay in this. But I want to so go back for a second. Like, when did you hit the wall, or do you feel like there was a one event where you really hit the wall that there was no way but to climb up, or was it just really that sequence of events, that the
I
wall
think
was a
there was this
sequence?
Yeah, I think the wall was a sequence. And that's why I was like, that's why it's a little complicated to answer that question that you asked of like, did you know? So it's like, I knew something was wrong. And also, so I was asking for help, right? Like, I think that is key, right? That learning how to ask for help is probably the biggest gift I was ever given in my
Mm.
life, right? And then continuing to do it, right? Like, I just continue. I have so much support now, right? And so that was key. And also the whole time that I'm like asking for support and learning really basic things about, the body and gut health and dopamine, and kind of changing a little bit about the way I ate and getting real help around this eating disorder that I had for years and was
Mm.
too terrified to talk to anybody about, because it was like a doctor who first implanted that idea in my head that there was something wrong with my body. So like talking to a doctor about it was terrifying. It's going to make me
Yeah.
tear up to even think about that moment. And so I
Yeah,
was
it sounds
doing
like it
work
wasn't
around
safe.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't safe. And so, but I felt like I landed between this coach and this therapist and this psychiatrist that all had experience in that and all could hold me in that, right?
Yeah.
Like I picked these women's names out of the phone book, basically. I don't even know what a phone book then, but it was just like, oh, this therapist is close to my house and takes my insurance. I guess I'll go with her. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Or maybe you
Anyway,
were guided, maybe you were guided to them, you know, thinking
oh,
that they're
absolutely.
choosing. Yeah.
I picked this coach because I was in this women's group, and we would meet in Beverly Hills on Tuesdays at 10 o'clock in the morning. So just imagine what Beverly Hills women at Tuesdays at 10 o'clock that have nowhere else to be look like. And this woman would come and wear a scrunchie in her hair and no makeup. And I was like, and she was the most confident woman in the room. And I was like, what does she do? I want what she has. Like, it was
Yeah.
that's how I started working with her. I was like, I want to be able to walk into this room
Yeah.
and not wear makeup and have a scrunchie in my hair. And, you know, and so it was that, like, that sort of stuff. Right. And so I do feel it was really guided. But to get back to the question, it was a little bit more complicated than that, because as I was still doing this work and having these aha moments and making these really scary changes, I was also still like bound and determined to make this business plan that I went out there work. I was bound and determined to make this, you know, all the financial things that I went out. So I was kind of like running uphill or swimming upstream or whatever you want to say, like at the same time that I was having these like really spiritual experiences and
Mm.
being really led by God, right? And so there wasn't a moment where it hit the wall. I mean, eventually it got to the point where I can't really say it was this huge wall, but eventually it got to the point where it was like I remember two really distinct moments. I remember leaving the women's group and walking back to my house. And I was walking down Rodeo Drive. And I remember, and meanwhile, I had been kind of like in the fat positive world and the body positive world, and like familiar with all these influencers and podcasters and authors, and was friendly with them, right? Just because of the internet world and being in plus size fashion. And so I can't really say we were friends, but we would DM each other and that sort of thing. And I kept thinking of this one woman that kept her Virgie Tover, her whole thing is you have the right to remain fat. And I was walking down Rodeo Drive and I was about to walk in the Prada store, and I was like, maybe I don't need this. Like, maybe she's right. Like, maybe I just have the right to be whoever I am, right? Like, I remember having that aha moment, right? And then I remember getting the shoe salesmen there are like drug dealers, and they will text you when something new comes in. And I remember like getting this text message from the Lawn Bond store that these new shoes had come in my size, which was also a size 12. So I barely fit in the shoes either. And there's these free parking garages there. And I was like going up the parking garage looking for a spot. And I got all the way to the top and I went, this feels like a drug deal. And I was like, I don't need these shoes. Like, it was this and I just like didn't get out of the car. I just drove back down, and the parking attendant was like, is there a problem, ma'am? And I'm like, no. Like, I just left, right? And I never answered that text, and I don't think can't say I've never bought a designer pair of shoes since then, but
But
it's very few.
it sounds like you saw some truth, you know, like you kind of saw through the lie of it all. And also, what an amazing point to make, that like maybe I don't need to change who I am.
Yeah.
Maybe the thing is, and I find that a lot in my work too, that it's not about changing who we are, it's changing the attitude that we have towards ourselves. So that who we are is just who we are. But that the self-beating, the hating, the lack of acceptance, you know, just creates this chaos. So if like the attitude can shift.
And when I started getting that worth piece that you're talking about, right? Like that attitude shift, when it started slowly being like, maybe my body is okay exactly how it is. Like, maybe I don't need these shoes to make myself feel better. When I start, like, that stuff started shifting. And then eventually, I don't remember the exact timeline of this, I was only out there a year and a half. It was like, oh, this relationship isn't working. Like, I don't like, I'm not being treated well. Like, I deserve more than that. Right. Like, it was this, like that. So that it was like this inside job to my worthiness piece. And it was this, I don't want to sound dramatic when I say this, but it was this like gateway to freedom in some way. And I remember like sitting in that same therapist's office and being like, oh, this business relationship isn't working. I'm in an abusive relationship, just like all these men I used to date. And she was just like, oh, thank God you're finally getting it.
Yeah. So
Right?
as your confidence grows, or as your self-value grows, you ask more for yourself. So when you don't value yourself, you let yourself be in abusive relationships because you think that's all you deserve. And as you become more self-honoring, you realize that you can't be in those relationships anymore.
Yeah, and then I also remember, I don't remember if it was the same session or not, but I also remember sitting in her office and her saying, "Well, if you don't want to do this business partnership, what do you want to do? Do you want to go home or do you want to open a store here? You still want to like be in LA?" And I remember thinking, and I feel like this is where my I feel like this was a nugget of like, oh, I think I'm starting to have confidence, because I remember being like, wow, I really do think I could do a store here. Like, I still think this idea is really valid. And I still think that it's really necessary and doable and profitable and all of that. Let me sit on that. I don't know if I actually want to stay here or not. Like, like it was
Yeah.
suddenly like I had choice because I believed in myself. Right. And
Mm,
ultimately I decided I wanted to come back to New Orleans because I love New Orleans. Right.
yeah.
And that's what happened. But it was this moment, was like, wow, I could stay here and do this all by myself, right? Like
Yeah.
I could do that and I could make it really successful, right? Like
Yeah.
it was this worthiness piece. So do you see why I'm saying, like, I don't know if it was a wall, it was layers, right?
Yeah.
But they all somehow worked together, and also felt very guided by something bigger than myself.
Yeah. So on the subject of courage, is there one thing that jumps to you as kind of like where you really met your own courage?
I don't know if there's one thing. I think there's, maybe I'm on a layers theme today. I think there's layers of that too. I feel like courage, I feel like courage is any time that I've kind of hit that growth edge, right?
Mhm.
Like any time that I'm being asked to do something that's gonna push me a little further in my spiritual path, really,
Yeah.
right? And being terrified to do it because I'm scared to be vulnerable and do
Mm.
it anyway. Right?
Yeah.
Like that, and that can look like um something as small as, setting a boundary with someone that I've never had a boundary with, right?
Right.
Or um asking someone out on a date that I've never done before, right?
Yeah.
Or really big things like moving home from LA,
Yeah.
right? And not being like that's a failure, or, something that I did during the pandemic of like closing my store and pursuing this coaching career full time.
Right.
Like it can be really big things, but it can also be really little scary things every day. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And sometimes those little things feel more scarier, more like it takes more courage than the big stuff sometimes. And I don't know
Yeah.
what that's about. Like,
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Right. We think courage, meaning, but it can be found in like the most minute, subtle stuff in our
yeah.
life. Um,
And
um,
for me, it usually has to do with using my voice. It
mm,
usually has to do with like, I mean, this sounds so basic, but like I'm doing some house construction and like the email communication is not going well. And I keep finding myself pissed off at the contractor. And it's as simple as like, oh my God, I'm going to have to call them and actually tell them that this isn't working for me, right? Even though it's my house and I have every right to have it done the way that I have the design done, the way I want it done or whatever. And it's that scare. Every time I pick up the phone, is that scary moment, right? And there's something about that if I do enough of those tiny, scary moments, the big stuff somehow doesn't feel as scary. I don't know. So
it's
that's what
so,
I
so
think of when I
true.
think of courage.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's so true what you're saying because we tend to categorize our lives like, oh, I have a hard time with career. I have a hard time with my weight. I have a hard time with relationship. But whenever we stand up for ourselves and speak our truth, it leaks into everything that we do. It's not compartmentalized into one area. So when you start, cultivating self-honoring, you're going to be self-honoring with a contractor too, and make sure that it
Yeah.
happens, this is my house. This is my body. This is my life. This is how I want it to
Yeah.
be. So it's not like so So you're saying, oh, it's silly with a contractor. It's really not silly because this is how it's being expressed right now. And
Yeah.
yeah. Two questions before we
Okay.
end. One is, how are things for you now? I mean, there seems to have been a lot of struggle and a lot of finding yourself. How is life for you now?
Life for me now is pretty good.
Hmm.
I can't say it's not without any struggle, but I realized the other day that all of my biggest fears have come true. I am 43 and single. I never got any of some of, I don't know how to say that. Like, I just like everything that, like, if I would look back at my 20-year-old self and like all the things that she would write down and want in her life, like none of that has happened. Right.
Yeah.
And also, I couldn't be happier. Right. Like, I have this very simple life. I have weekends off for the first time in 20 years, and I am enjoying them as much as possible. I'm learning how to have them, right? Like, who knew that was a growth edge of learning how to have fun and relax, and that part of taking care of yourself. I have more friends that we pour love into each other than
Mm.
than I have time to hang out with. Like that, like I couldn't have said that you know, when I hit that first wall back in 2011, when I was in another shitty relationship with a shitty man and had weight loss surgery and lost all this weight and still felt like crap about myself and was still doing all these numbing out coping mechanisms and all that. Like I didn't know what it was to be a friend or have a friend, right? And I didn't know
Mm.
the beauty of that. I have a home that I love. I have this silly little dog that cracks me up every day of my life. I never wanted a tiny little yappy dog, and somehow I have one, and he's the best gift in my life. So it's like everything, right? Like everything, all the material things, right, that I wanted, that I thought I needed for success have not happened. And
Hmm.
also, I couldn't be happier.
Mm. So fantastic. And what
And I get to
amazing
pass this on to other women, right? Like, I love my
yeah.
job. I don't even call it work. I don't even say
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
So what would you, if you can have people understand one thing that, can help them, what would you want it to be if you had like one message from your experience to share?
I think from my experience, the one thing that I would want, I'm just going to say every plus size woman in the world, because that is my niche. That are the people that I love. Those are the women that I identify with, that I just know that I know that shame of living in a larger body and being told that you're too much and not enough at the same time. And those are the women that I want them all to know without a shadow of a doubt that they are inherently worthy and
Mm.
they deserve to let the sun touch their skin as much as any thin-bodied woman out there. Right? Like, I just want them to know that regardless of what the outside looks like, they are worthy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I can feel how much you mean it. Yeah.
Oh,
Wow,
thank you.
Jaclyn, thank you so much for showing up and for sharing so much of yourself, with me and anybody else who might be listening. And for anybody out there who wants to learn more about Jaclyn's work, I will add a link to her website under this video. So check her out and all the amazing works that she's doing. Until next time, thank you.
A- Abby, I just want to say real quick, thank you. And I count you in that number of women who pour love into me. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for being with us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to my channel and help spread the love so that we can reach more human beings who might want some inspiration to live more courageously and authentically. And to learn more about my work and how I help women in their midlife reclaim their sense of purpose so that the rest of their life can be spent more joyfully, creatively, and more aligned with who they are now, just hop over to my website. The link is below, and feel free to sign up for my free consultation. I can't wait to hear the vision that you have for yourself.